Nigeria, Nigerians, and the world at large. This morning we're talking about the 16 days of activism. Remember, we started this conversation last week where we had the Mandate Secretary for Women Affairs in the studio talking about the 16 days of activism and, stopping gender violence or gender-based violence, especially against women and girls. This morning, and Girl Child Advocate, she is also of the Bridge Inspire Foundation, joining us this morning to discuss this. The theme for this year's 16 days of activism, or our campaign, is accelerating actions to end gender-based violence and femicide, leaving no one behind. Good morning, Christina, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's so great to be here.
Good to have you too. So let's get into the conversation. The theme for this year, some people have described as very apt. What do you make of the theme for this year, and why is it so relevant?
Thank you first for that, for the introduction also. I think it is very relevant because over the years, there's been a lot of conversations around how we need to end sexual and gender-based violence against women and girls. But one key word that really strikes out for me is the accelerating. Over the years, there've been a lot of talk. So how about we speed up that talk and get to the point of action? So that's why it's really important that we accelerate all that has been happening, all the policies that have come up, all the political will that have been needed over the years to come to the year 2023. I think the team is very, very essential, and it speaks to how we need to be invested in fighting the pandemic that is gender-based violence.
Interesting. When we started this conversation last week with the Mandate Secretary, was talking about taking it down to the communities, taking it down to the grassroots. Now, why is it so crucial for communities to actively participate in these campaigns, and how can individuals make a difference at grassroots levels?
I think communities are like the core of this fight, because there's a whole lot of silence effect going on in the at the community levels. And most times when I talk about communities, I like to bring in the slant of traditional rulers and even religious rulers in the small sect of these communities, because the inclusion and the education and awareness has to begin from the grassroots. If you speak to women and girls, especially at grassroots level, you will be shocked at the void of lack of information that these women and these girls don't have. Some of them don't even understand what it means to be sexually abused, to be physically abused, or to be mentally abused. And that's what we are fighting from November 25 up until December 10th to culminate the 16 days of activism. It is very, very important that it starts from the grassroots. Speak to people around you. You mentioned individuals. As I am a girl mom, so I understand why it is important that we fight the menace that is gender-based violence. I try to educate, especially a lot of young women around me, at my community level, even at my street level. Because if you don't start singing the gospel from that point, those are the people that will grow up and then go into the larger part of society. And if they don't go in with the right ideologies that we don't have to condone this, we have to allow survivors to speak up. We need to end violence against women and girls. It means we are going around in a circle, a very dangerous circle that needs to break down. So I think it is important to start at community level, incorporate traditional rulers, give them the right information, and they pass it down in form of education to community members.
So we've had this he for she thingy going on.
Shiro also.
Shiro as well. Sometimes we leave out the men. The last time I had this conversation, we had some guys calling and say, "Look, it's not only women who are being abused, who are being, physically abused. Especially some men also get raped and all of that." But let's talk about how men can be a big part, an integral part of, engendering and also pushing the fight towards stopping gender-based violence, especially against women and girls.
I'm really happy that you are a man and you're having this conversation with me and spearheading the fact that 16 days of activism and we need to bring this to an end. I think men need to be partners in progress. Like you said, boys are also abused, and that's a very important part that should not be left out as we want to be activists to end gender-based violence. It's also important to bring in the slant that boys are also abused just as women and girls. But I think men need to also lend their voices and say, oh, we need this to stop, because women are being abused by men. So if you have men coming out and saying that this thing going on, we do not condone it, we need to end it. It will really, really go a long way. Educating fellow men also. You hear things like, oh, a man cannot rape his wife. You hear things like that come up. But if we have other men stand up and say, no, this is not true, we have to pass the right information to men, even at community level, at church level, at organizational level, it will also give some sort of morale booster to women to say, oh, these men are actually standing in the gap and also fighting this battle for us. So I think it's important that men also wear the hat, like you said, he for she, and a lot of sheroes we have around us also wear that hat and say that we need to end this, because it's years. And I know you must have done your research before coming up here, and you must have seen the years of fight, the years of activism that has come up to now, and it will still continue up until 2030. We need to, if we must make that leap, we need all hands to be on deck.
Now, let's talk about encouraging an atmosphere that allows people to speak up, because that's one of the challenges that we've noticed over time. So people can be abused, but they don't want to speak up. Some people consider themselves role models to other people, and so they don't want to speak up, and then begin to lose that. That's maybe that kind of revere that they used to have, and so they feel like if I speak up, a popular one that comes to mind would be that of Osinachi. When she passed, several people said, "Oh, she should have spoken up. She should have told." But people don't really put themselves in their shoes to see how difficult it would be for them. So someone who is considered maybe a spiritual leader, coming out to say, "Oh, my marriage isn't working. I'm being, abused in my marriage," and all of that. It may be difficult because she's thinking, "Oh, I've told many people to, maybe endure. I've told many people to learn how to manage their husbands and manage their relationships. How can I now be the one coming out to say that mine isn't working?" So how do we create an environment that fosters or that enables people to speak up when they're being abused, especially at local levels where there's a lot of patriarchal dominance, on all of that? Encouraging women to speak up in those communities, how can we do that?
I think this is the crucial fight amongst all of this, and I'll just give you a little backstory. I remember I used to work with one of the foundations, especially trying to incorporate out of school girls back into school, and there was a very, very traumatic story I heard. There's a father that was abusing all of his daughters. And he was quite prominent in the small society they were in, so even the mothers could not speak up. So the daughter spoke to the mothers, but the mothers hushed them up and said, "Don't say this thing. You cannot say this thing outside."
In the North we say, "Rufamana asiri."
Exactly, cover my secret, cover my shame, that kind of thing. Those were the responses. But luckily enough, this foundation was able to get into the nitty-gritty of it, and they were able to take the girls away from their father. But let me tell you something. It was after some months the mothers came to beg that the father has changed and they want the daughters to go back, and one of the daughters eventually went back, and the abuse, the whole abuse cycle continued. So I think it's breaking the path of silence. The World Health Organization will say first when you get to meet a survivor of domestic violence, it is important that you first listen. A lot of people that are supposed to be support systems, they don't listen. And that really, really affects the place of trying to break that silence. And that's one of the major challenges we even face at Bridge Inspire Foundation. A lot of times when you have victims and you are pushing for them, you go to the police, you go to NAPTIP at state level, you hear things like, "Oh, auntie, I don't want to continue again. My mommy say I should not bring our family to shame." So it is important that we keep fighting. These challenges are there. But it is important to also keep encouraging the victims and telling them that, "Oh, we are one, we are together, and we are here to fight your battle and to fight your cause." I know it's not a sprint, it is a marathon.
See people in the media or in communication, you're told, "Oh, one of the most indecent things to do is to put out the face of a minor when they're abused," and all of that. But so many people do not understand these things. I've been in situations where the media is invited to cover situations like that. A child is being abused, and then you have cameramen everywhere, and I have to raise my voice to say, "No, look, even if you're going, this is for children." There are older people as well who are afraid of being stereotyped. There are parts of this country where if you've been raped, you're considered or somewhat ostracized.
Yes, unclean.
You're considered unclean, and people don't want to relate to you, even if you're the victim. You're the one who should have, who people should rally around. But then you seem to have people distancing themselves from you. How do we educate that? How do we reduce that? That all of this. We really reduce this.
I think largely how we can really tackle this issue of stereotyping survivors of sexual and gender-based violence is really in education. Take for instance what you are doing, what Eagle FM is doing, speaking to people. There are some media houses that might not see the importance of what you're doing, but you're taking the bull by the horns and say we have to put this knowledge out there. We need people to be aware that this thing is happening and it needs to stop. I think at the core of ending stereotyping is education. There are people that do not even know that you are not supposed to say this. And it is important that even at government levels, the NOA, for instance, let's champion jingles, let's champion short clips and say, oh, this is what it is. A rape victim did not bring it upon herself. The skirt she was wearing or the way she was dressed is not what caused her to be in the unfortunate situation. I think education and a lot of awareness. And this brings me to the issue of funding. A lot of times, things around gender-based or tackling these issues, you hear stories about a lot of these agencies, even the desk, a good chunk of funding goes to the NOA. Of course, the NOA will want to be disposed to say, let's educate people. In these 60 days of activism, let's put the right knowledge on across all media outlets, mainstream, new media. Let's tell people that this is what should be, this is not what should be. So I think at the core of that is really education.
Very interesting. Education. Now, how do we drive this education? That's very important. I know we're doing something similar. That's what we're doing now. But I'm looking at the, like you mentioned earlier, the community levels, the grassroots levels. How do we drive this? You mentioned the NOA driving campaigns like this, but on it at individual levels, how can we begin to engage our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors, to tell them this is what gender-based violence is, and this is how you can report. The channels to reporting, very important.
So at my small home level or my community level where I grew up, in Kogi State, there's something I do whenever I go back home. I do something like an outreach. I call people together, I call women together, and I just speak to them about a lot of this. What you should know, what you should not know, what is abuse, what is some of the culture. A lot of our women, especially at grassroots level, they accept is abuse, and they do not even understand that they are being abused. So as individuals, I think even you on your social media, on Twitter, on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, if you see some level of misinformation, you should be able to say, oh, this is wrong. This is what it should be. Even make out individual posts as yourself. You might think nobody is saying it, but there is a power in what it is. Even amongst our neighbors, like you said, even amongst our colleagues, there are people that we hold in high esteem. But when they start speaking about these things, you're gobsmacked and say, oh, you are also thinking this way. So as individuals, we should be able to educate ourselves, even at secondary school levels. I also, at Bridge Inspire Foundation, what we do is we go to secondary schools, we speak to girls, even at their club levels, the smaller clubs in school, speak to them, tell them about what this is, what it comprises of, and how you should be able to identify gender-based violence where you see one, because some people do not even know how to identify it.
This brings me to ask, talking about education, how can we at least
parents that what you don't teach your child at home, the internet will help you. The internet will help you to teach your child. So I encourage mothers, parents to always, I have like a small group where we're young parents, we're in, with the older parents, it's a little bit difficult to change that knowledge of you have to sex educate your child. And good thing is, a lot of the I at a training where for guardian counselors, especially in secondary schools. So a lot of times, guardian counselors in secondary schools now are being encouraged that you can tell these children this. And the school is also passing the information at PTAs that we are training our guidance counselors on this and there. But at parental level, I strongly advise that you sex educate your teenager, because someone else will teach them for you, and they will teach them the wrong thing if you're not careful.
Like you mentioned, the internet these days, just something where people, and there are also books that children can stumble
Thank you,
upon,
yeah.
the cartoons that they watch. I mean, there's a lot of those things. You want to be very, very
Yeah,
careful.
yeah.
Be the one teaching your child and guiding your child rather than have one random cartoon that you watch because you're not paying attention. You don't
Yeah.
really, animations that kids
I also
watch.
saw that.
Had some very obscene or very
Yeah.
the kind of sexuality that we do not really encourage around here that I wouldn't want my kids to learn about on TV. Now imagine that your child hears about it or sees that first from TV and they're forced to ask you, what is this?
Yeah.
And maybe they ambush, you know how kids can be, they ambush
True.
you with those questions and then you're wondering, where did you get that from? But you allowed them watch it because
Yeah.
you're not paying attention. There's a lot of things that we need to do as parents to educate our children. Now that's and we talked about reporting earlier. What are the services available to them, so that they can get support? Because psychosocial support is very important for survivors.
Yeah.
A lot of times we allow people just go through whatever they go through and we say, oh, it's fine, you're going to be
Yes.
all right, okay, without providing support, at least someone to listen to them
Sure.
and provide that kind of emotional support.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up because there are a lot of survivors that really do not know where to go to. And I really have to ask, is it okay if we mention names in this conversation? I don't want to get an invoice after this.
I would love to give you an invoice though, but anyway, just go ahead. I mean, we're trying to get people help.
Okay. I'm so glad you're talking about this because I met some months ago. I met a young girl that she has been abused by her uncle, and that's the dangerous part. People you call family now abuse words under their care, and she didn't know where to go to. So I was speaking, and she just pulled me aside and said, "Auntie, please, can I speak with you?" And I was like, "Oh, of course. What's the problem?" And she opened up to me that this thing you are saying, I've been facing it too. This is my problem I've been facing. I just did not know where to go. And I also have to speak to issues around, because so far, I think in terms of the government, looking at it from the federal level or from the government level, I think it's only NAPTIP that really has a shelter where a lot of survivors can go to. And even NAPTIP, they're calling for better budgetary allocations for them to be able to have bigger shelters to take care of survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. I know of the Mirabel Center. The Mirabel Center, they provide, like you said, psychosocial counseling, they provide shelter, they provide the support that a lot of survivors need. I know of the Stand to End Rape also. The STAIR, they also provide all the support that survivors need amid all of these that we have been speaking about. Project Alert also, and all this they are all reachable on, you can just type them on Google and their hotline comes up and you can just place a call. I'm very sure of Mirabel Center and Stand to End Rape. Even the Lagos State Domestic Violence, we see them a lot of time on X, quote tweets that say, there was a viral tweet that went viral sometime last week of somebody confidently speaking on camera that he raped someone. So I think a lot of these initiatives have become more accessible on social media for a lot of you. On you can just Google them on the internet. You don't even need to go to Twitter if you don't have an X account, if you don't have a Facebook account. These people are readily available. If you're on X, that's even better. You can just type their handles, shoot them a DM and tell them what your problem is. And I'm very sure through that route, you as a survivor, you should be able to get help.
Well, and for those of you who may not be, just may hurt them some more. Look, the secondary school, a teenager who's PT, Women Affairs Secretariat. I get that, and I'll send that to you. I put that across to you as well. Now
you can also reach out to us, and we can also help you push through to the necessary authorities when we have issues. I don't know if it's okay if I just call out
the number, so long as they're not going to have to pay for anything.
No, you don't have to pay for anything. I can assure you that you don't have to pay for anything. But if you're a survivor and you're hearing us on Eagle 2, so please just reach out to any of this number. And like you said, the doors of the FCT Women's Center is open. And the key to fighting this, like he also mentioned, is please speak up. Speak up, and I think by all the enlightenment that is going on, there are even private organizations that are also willing to help.
Yes, there are. Please, I mean, you can only find help when you speak up, when you ask questions. So ask around the people. If you cannot take up all of these information, ask around the people who would be able to to Lead Communications Lofty Inc. Group and a girl child advocate. She is also part of the Breed Inspire Foundation. Joining us this morning in this conversation. Feel free to be a part of it. If you want to report anything, please feel free to do so now. I mean, this is a safe space. Open up, just let us know, and they will be able to take this up and help you find solutions to whatever challenges you're facing, especially regarding gender-based violence, GBV. Sexual and gender-based violence, by the way, SGB 0044 and 09087668888. Those are the numbers to call. You can send a message to 09097054450. That is 09073530044. And talking more in a bit. Just stay with us. We'll take a quick pause now. We'll come back. We'll be talking a lot more around these issues, and we'll talk practical ways that you can find help and practical ways that you can also find that you can also report the Eagles 102.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
Are you looking for an internet service that will make surfing on the internet an enjoyable one? Do you want a super fast connection to the internet? Look no further, as Eagles Internet Services is here for you, an effective internet service provider with 99% proven reliability for residential and office services. We provide unlimited internet bandwidth services of different bundles tailored to meet your desires and taste. It is reliable, affordable, with a wide coverage. You can locate them at Plot 1719 Cadastral Zone B, Kaura District, or you can call 081 33121423 or 09065765969. Eagles Internet Service. Stay connected to everything you love.
Please listen to this announcement. I got great news. No excuses for anyone not to have access to good water. With Farex Borehole, pay 50% and pay 35965170 or 08077204219.
Our office address is located at Goshen Plaza, opposite Jabi Motor Park, Second Gate, Abuja.
Let us win water challenge together, because water is life.
Eagles.
Come on and wake me up.
Wake up. Wake up.
Sound up.
Your morning show.
Get a little boost of energy. Come on and wake me up.
102.3 Abuja.
Thank you again for staying with us on your radio experience. You can count on. It's Eagles 102.3 and you're on to Eagles Outlook. This morning on Eagles Outlook, we're talking about the 16 days of activism and ways to end sexual and gender-based violence amongst women and girls, preventing it and bringing a stop to it. We want it completely gone. No woman and no girl deserves to be abused in any way by anyone. So join the conversation 09073530044 and 09087668888. That is 0907353. Hello, you Chief Cosmos, is that you?
Yes.
Let's hear you.
Chief Cosmos from Chile.
Welcome.
Yes, this is a very nice it's awareness. This ladies trying to create the Nigerians. Trying to keep it up. Sexual abuse on their children because of the stigmatization that it follows it. They don't want to know what is happening between their watch, which is quite not right. Overseas, they expose everything exposable, irrespective of who committed it. Now, I'm not a supporter when they say because the way a woman dress or a lady dress attracts people to respond. No. What is in my own mind, the way somebody dress is how people address her. If you dress neatly, I condemn it. But still, it's emotional something. if somebody is not dressed proper, it will not arouse your sexual instinct on that person. What is to tell you that this person is advertising her body for one thing or the other, which is condemnable. But if you say a man who say because this person did not dress well, that's why he replied, she has that intent in his mind before that crime is committed. So he should be punished for that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Chief Cosmos, for lending your voice to the conversation. You too can be a part of it. Call 09073530044 and 09087668888. Now, we have seen situations where people are... Okay, let's bring in this caller before we get back to...
Now make the what of the way children take dress for her? Now make father they rape them, they rape their children. Now we are coming out now. Now Christmas they come now. Maybe you tell your wife to go home to go and visit your family. Then the small girl wey dey, you say make the woman leave her for you. Before you do gumbo, some liquor, some tight wey they wear inside. Even though the liquor for my village, when you wear that liquor inside, you get other way when you will wear too before you wear tight. But if this Abuja nowadays, you go come. But this person is supposed to wear sleep. You go take a waka, advertise himself. See, if any man rape you, now you go fight the man trouble. You know against that one.
BB
Because
Blessing,
you know when you get to
BB
get
Blessing,
yourself.
BB Blessing,
Eh?
that's not the way to go.
The
BB
way when you
Blessing.
get to get yourself, now man will see you rape you.
Thank
If
you
protect
very much.
yourself, who are not
Thank
any
you.
man, and no man
Thank
will
you
see
very
you
much
just rape
for
you like that.
calling. Thank you very much. Again, this is what we're talking about. The notion that, if it's because of the way they dressed. I mean, look, no one is encouraging people who have clad, but you don't rape them. Why do you, if it's the way that they dress, that's I mean, that should have been enough reason to go around and see everybody unclad and rape them, including people who have mental health challenges. But you don't do that. Why do you pick other people? It just means that there is something that you are the problem. It's not what they wear that is the problem. Okay, let's address that. A person who goes out to, there are people who see people fully or totally unclad and run away. Why can't you be one of those who runs away when you see people like that? Let's address these things. You cannot blame the person for being robbed and say, oh, why did we do that? We say, oh, why did you carry so much money? Why did you do this? Why did you have your phone at such time? People cannot be blaming. We cannot be blaming victims. It's for us to be morally sound and make those judgments and say, look, I'm not going to be this person. I'm not going to be a rapist. Kumode, that's for you. Thank you so much for joining the family. Go ahead, let's hear you.
Thanks. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. My own take on this is yes, you shouldn't be encouraged at all for people to go out to rape. We shouldn't protect the female gender in the extent of the male. Let it not appear that anything that comes up about a rape, the male is always seen as at the receiving end. In most cases, you see those girls or those ladies, if anything, going out with guys, going to their home, and then they now come up and say, oh, this is the person raped her. Whereas she was the one that went there alone, knowing fully well that she is going to visit a grown-up man. So, in a case like this, they always see the guys as the plaintiff or the person at fault in between the two parties. Let it be that at least it is a 50-50 chance for both male and female. Men should not be, blackmailed at all times in the name of maybe female are weak, they are weaker vessel, then anything that happens is always the men that are the receiving end. Some females also do rape guys. We have seen series of such cases. But at the end of the day, it's the man that takes blame all the time. And there are series of false accusations of men around, even within our communities, which we know who are
conversation. I think you raised a quite important aspect of the conversation. Although I don't believe that we have a situation where men are blamed all the time and all of that. Again, if a woman visits a man and the man takes advantage of her, it is wrong.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether she went there alone, misbehave. It's called misbehavior for a reason, because you are the one who controls your behavior. Okay, do not misbehave when people visit you. If you cannot take them being in your house, don't invite them over to your house. All right, you don't invite people. It's not every. I mean, why do you invite people to? If they're not willing to, let them go, please. Okay, and you talked about the issue of accusation, false accusation, which is quite big. I mean, a lot of people have made rubbish of the advocacy against gender-based sexual violence and all of that, based on false accusations that have come up, especially on social media. People have seen, accusations. We've seen situations where people have been accused and then dragged and all of that stuff, and eventually it turns out it was all false accusation because, she wanted to gain something from it. How do we discourage this? Because it makes a mess of the fight against sexual and gender-based violence.
I think the cases, I was doing some research, and there's been cases of people taking their life, and it was later discovered that they were as individuals put out information. Please verify your information. And even as organizations that handle sexual and gender-based violence, when a survivor comes to you and say, I've been raped, it is also important and crucial to do the right investigation, because like you rightly mentioned, that puts a very huge dent on the advocacy, the fight that is going on to end this menace. And like you rightly mentioned, they are actually false accusations. We have to acknowledge that happens. But in as much as we know that happens, we have a large chunk. I have to disagree with this notion, like you said, that the way it took place, it speaks to the psyche of the person that perpetrated the act. It is important that we put it out there that the way a person is dressed is not part of the reasons why they are sexually or physically abused.
Well said. We'll take a few more calls, maybe 1 or 2 more, and then we wrap it up. But then let's talk about this. Parents of survivors who go to maybe the courts or go to the police and say, you know what, we want to withdraw this.
You have mentioned. I think it is important to put the information out there for the families to also understand that we are in cahoots. We want the same thing. We are fighting the same fight. We want to bring justice to your child or your family member that has been sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally abused. The more the family members or the loved one to look at the person trying to help the case of the survivor, I think it will go a long way. Also, those at the desk that they are coming to meet, it is important along. But for prosecution, I think the families, the loved ones of the survivors need to work hand in hand with the authorities, the security agencies, to ensure that a lot of, like you said, if we have like 5 people jailed for sexual based crime, it will send a signal, and we have all of that on the news. It will send a signal that there is a crime, there is a consequence for that action. So even the justice system also has a role to play in all of this.
Well, let's talk further on that. You mentioned the VAP and some of these policy frameworks that have been put in place. Lots of people do not know about the Violence Against Persons Prohibition law that exists, and how can we make sure that people are aware of their rights and the laws that exist. I always cite Kaduna State. Kaduna State, in domesticating the VAP, says they're going to castrate men who are found liable for sexual violence, and But I mean, these are signs that we are taking this seriously. It sends a message that this is a serious issue and we want to take it seriously. What are these laws that most people need to be more familiar with?
I think one of the laws that really protects survivors, like you have mentioned, is the VAP of 2015. Like, the VAP encompasses all you need to know about how a survivor should be protected. But then again, it comes to domestication, because it's okay at the federal level to say, oh yes, we've put the VAP in place. The VAP is supposed to help fight this. But the subvoid of good policies, we have the best policies. But the bane always comes in the implementation processes. So if at state levels, because we know that you can get justice when there's an escalation in Abuja, it is very easy to get justice. I know you agree with me, Hanacho. But at the state level, there's really a whole lot going on, and we need more commitment from even the state governors. It is not out of place for them to pledge and say, in these 16 days of activism, we are pledging that these are some of the things that really mitigate the work of advocacy, the fight that a lot of non-governmental actors are instigating these laws to help protect survivors, protect people, individuals generally, from sexual and gender-based violence.
Finally, I wanted to talk about something you mentioned earlier, the culture of, oh, she's my wife. No one can say that a man rapes his wife. There are cultures that, say, look, a man is a man. A man should be in charge, and whenever he wants it, he should take it, he should have it, it's his own, and all of that. And some men would agree with this. Even people who are really rural communities, to let them know that, look, I was reading a story this morning on X where a man was fired from work because he says he could not take women cannot control him, women cannot tell him what to do. And this is a person who's really broke. A woman helped him find a job, right? But he says, no woman can control me. He's a cook, a fantastic cook. He was hired at a restaurant or hotel or so. And the women who were, his heads would give instructions that they would flout them and say no woman can tell him what to do. And he had to leave the job. So it's that difficult, including people, for people who really need the job, who really want to make money, to say we're going to sacrifice to those levels of people, to change their mindsets, to see that a woman is not a property that you own.
Yes. Learn and relearn, like you have said. But let's even drop all this vocabulary aside, because when you go to these people, they don't want to hear the big English you're bringing, and it is also crucial to speak to them about consent. I do that a lot. And where I advise in terms of driving this message on consent, especially with spouses, with men, is especially in spaces like religious spaces, spiritual spaces, because there's a tendency for them to listen more. So I was recently speaking at one of the churches, and there were men, there were women present, and there was a different speaker that spoke to men about consent. And I could tell you that there were a lot of in a lot of people. So for me, it might be superficial, but I feel somebody somewhere is getting the message. So for the message of consent at grassroots, at community level, there's a whole lot of misinformation going on in that space. That's why the good thing now is that we have a lot of messages being passed down in local languages. So that is also helping us drive the misinformation, or bridging that gap of misinformation. I think it is important. Well, they have their rights, their human rights.
They have their mind. They
have the mind
the
of
rights
their
to choose.
own. Exactly, that you are not supposed to violate at any point. So I think the message of consent is what we are never going to get tired of preaching. We, as individuals, as groups, as persons, as organizations, it's important that we spread the message of consent to both males, females, men and women, even at teenagers level, because a knowledge that you learn as a child tends to stick longer than something probably you learn in passing. So for me, it's consent all the way.
All right, this would be a good place to leave the conversation. To remember that your wife, your daughter, that's your girlfriend, is not your property. They have a right. Yes, consent is everything. Do not take advantage of anyone. Do not, because you're stronger or any of those things, take advantage of anyone. And that a person visits you is not consent. That they lay on your bed is not consent. They're sitting on your couch, they eat your suya and eat your rice